Hello, I'm Sean Lim, and welcome to After 10. Diplomatic challenges these days encompass more than nation-to-nation conflicts. They're regional, from the North Korean human rights situation to Japan's wartime sexual slavery. On today's After 10, we explore how solving global problems require global partners. Stay with us. The UN Human Rights Council held a meeting last month in Geneva, where Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se raised the unresolved historical matter of comfort women.
This is an added insult to the honor and dignity of those victims who had weathered physical and psychological pains in their lifelong haunted memories. Such an attitude is an affront to humanity and disregards the historical truth.
The Human Rights Council also passed a resolution on North Korea. Ambassador Choi Seok-young has been playing a leading role in raising global awareness about the sexual slavery and North Korean human rights issues. As a specialist in multilateral diplomacy, he is focused on reaffirming the improved international status of Korea. Meet Choi Seok-young and hear more about the human rights issues affecting the Korean Peninsula. Well, Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us tonight on After 10.
Thank you very much for having me today.
You are Korea's ambassador to the UN in Geneva. Can you tell us more about your role there and how your office functions?
UN mission in Geneva has to cover a number of issues ranging from trade, development, environment, and humanitarian assistance and human rights, etc., and etc. And there are so many actors and stakeholders we have to take care of. Therefore, as an ambassador based in Geneva, we have to work together with all different type of stakeholders in addressing different type of issues at hand. And another aspect I have to say is that there are many expectations from the countries that Korea should play the role in international organizations. Because Korea has developed from absolute poverty several decades ago. Now Korea has emerged one of the most exemplary developed countries. Therefore, they are asking us to take some responsibility commensurate with Korea's the development stage.
So you negotiate Korea's commitments on global issues?
Yes, Korea actually commensurate with Korea's capability and level of development, we have to discharge our duties as a member of international community. And we also ask for other countries to do the same for the interest of the Korea.
And you're here in Korea for the annual ambassadors meeting with the president. What is the main function of that gathering?
This year's annual ambassadors meeting focused primarily two underlying agenda items. Number one is unification. Second is creative economy. Regarding the unification agenda item, this government has pursued the three happiness. That is national happiness, regional happiness, and then happiness of the international community. In order to pursue this objective, this government has focused the priority of the preparedness of the unification. In order to achieve this goal, we have to take trust politic, the unification policy based on trust building. And secondly, we have also to provide a favorable international environment conducive to the unification process. And thirdly, we have also to talk among ourselves in Korea to pursue the national unification. And the President Park Geun-hye made a very bold initiative in Dresden, Germany last week when she paid a visit to Germany. she elaborated unification policy with the 3 agenda items. The first agenda is agenda for the humanitarian assistance. The second agenda is agenda for the co-prosperity of the South Korea and North Korea. And third agenda is agenda for the integration of North Korea's in international community. This bold initiative were declared by the President Park Geun-hye last week, and the task of ambassadors is how to implement this bold initiative as an ambassador based in the Korean missions abroad. And second, on the creative economy front, the goal of this creative economy policy is to reach the 4% of annual economic growth rate by the end of 2016. The President Park declared that 3-year economic reform agenda items, which primarily focus on the deregulation and increase of labor and capital, and also the productivity in order to achieve this goal. And ambassadors got together to discuss 2 underlying issues. Primarily, in addition to those 2 issues, we also discussed how we can best protect the Korean overseas and the Korean travelers in overseas, and also how we can promote how best we can serve the Korean people and as an ambassador based in foreign countries.
So at such a gathering with other ambassadors, I understand that you recommend the book Escape from Camp 14. Why is that?
This book is a story of a young man who was born and grown up in the concentration and detention camp in North Korea near Daedonggang River. He was born in this prisoners camp and then grown up for 20 years. Until he made up his mind to escape from this camp. And then he escaped North Korea and moved over to China and Korea. And then he settled down in United States and is now working on the NGO activities to promote the human rights situation in North Korea. His name is Shin Dong-hyuk. He's one of the most impressive human rights activists now. And the reason why I hand over this impressive book to the ambassadors based in Geneva, this is a non-fiction, a real story of North Korean defectors. And this book was not written by North Korean defector himself. The book was written by Mr. Blaine Harden, who is the reporter of the Washington Post. In order to ascertain, to confirm the real story of this North Korean defector, Mr. Harden had interviewed with Mr. Shin Dong-hyuk for around 1 year, and then verified all what he has said. Therefore, the substance, the contents of the book are very real, and it's very moving. And then after having read this book, most of the ambassadors came to me, and it was really impressive, and they were shocked by the harsh situations of North Korean human rights.
So it allows the other ambassadors to really understand what's going on with the issues when you talk about it at the UN level.
That is true.
And it brings a lot more compliance and partnership?
Oh, yes. They are much actually better in understanding the abysmal situation of North Korea's human rights violations, and they are much more proactive in cooperating with our government when discussing the North Korea's human rights situations.
So at the 25th session of the Human Rights Council, there was a film called Apostle that was shown to representatives as well. So how did that make an effect?
It was also very well received by the participants in the 25th sessions of the Human Rights Council, because this is another real story of North Korean defectors who lost his wife inside of a concentration camp. And then this film described the agony and frustration of a North Korean defector thinking of North Korea which has no freedom and which has no hope, and then full of frustrations and despair.
So at the UN, you pass resolutions based on the human rights situation in North Korea. What does that actually do?
The resolution contains broadly three main parts. The first part is they just described the current state of play of North Korea's human rights violations. They identified primarily 9 types of human rights violation, such as there is no freedom of access to the food, and there is no freedom of movement, and no freedom of expressions. And then there are existing the detention camps where the personal freedom was totally deprived. And also, North Korea has kidnapped a number of people from Korea and Japan. And all these things were elaborated very much in detail in the report of Commission on Inquiry, which has worked for last 1 year. And then this report concluded that mainly the crimes such as the abduction and kidnapping, and also the operation of detention camps would constitute the crime against humanity. And then North Korean governments and the leadership should be accountable for these crimes. And then this resolution just accepted the finding of the Commission on Inquiries. That is the first part of the resolution. And the second part of the resolution is that the resolution urges or asks international community to just to promote the improvement of North Korea's human rights situation. And also the resolution asks North Korea to stop violating human rights violations. And this resolution also asks international community to abide by the principle of non-refoulement, which is the principle that any country should not return the person who may be executed or punished if they are returned to their home countries. This is an important principle in protecting human rights. And this resolution also asked the UN General Assembly to refer this Commission on Inquiry's report to the Security Council for their consideration, including bringing the cases to the international criminal justice mechanisms. This is a very important part of the resolution.
So what are some of the follow-up measures after the resolution has been passed? And do you think it'll actually pass the Security Council? No,
not really in the real world, because the Security Council, the 5 permanent members of Security Council, which include Great Britain, UK, United States, the Russian Federation, and China, these 5 members have a veto power. If any one veto was requested, then any resolution may not be adopted. When this North Korea's resolution was adopted last week in Human Rights Council in Geneva, China and Russia opposed the adoption of this resolution. Therefore, it is highly probable that China or Russia may not actually endorse the passage of the resolution in Security Council. Therefore, it is highly unlikely it will pass in the Security Council. But the resolution just recommended a number of follow-up measures. If you allow me, I can elaborate. Number one, the resolution decided to extend the mandate of Special Rapporteur on North Korea's human rights situation, who is Mr. Darusman. He will continue to his work and then report his activity, report the implementation of this resolution for this year, and the report will be presented the March next year. And second follow-up measure is that resolution asks the High Commissioner on Human Rights to establish a field-based structure to follow up and to monitor the violation of human rights in North Korea. And this structure will be established somewhere in Asia, but the venue is not yet decided. And lastly, the United Nations members, including Security Council members, may make a couple of public outreach activities, including the briefing sessions, in order to diffuse the information of this resolution and then report of Commission on inquiries on North Korea's human rights situations.
Let's move to Korea-Japan relations. There's been a lot more international attention on the issue of Japan's wartime sexual slavery and its failure to really adequately address that. How does that issue affect your work over in Geneva?
The wartime sexual slave drafted by the Imperial Army of Japan was one of the standing agenda items in the Human Rights Council. The issue can be discussed under the agenda item of the prevention of sexual violence in time of conflicts and war. The issue, this agenda item is one of the most active agenda items now. Therefore, we can raise the issue under this agenda item.
What's your take on the way Japanese lawmakers have taken stances on the issue?
Their statements just denying the historical facts of the existence of the sexual slave, wartime sexual slave, forced by the Japanese army during the time of Second World War. It is an anachronistic statement, and it is an additional insult to the victims of this wartime sexual slave. And Japan should look into the historical facts, and then they show the sincere apology and then remorse to the victim.
And Korea's foreign minister has actually made it a priority. How has that created more significance for the issue?
Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se made a bold statement in the first week of March this year on the occasion of a high-level segment of the Human Rights Council meeting. He just pointed out this issue. Number one, the wartime sexual slave issues is not Korea-Japan problems. This is the issue which deserved the universal nature of the human rights violations. That is number 1 point. Second, he also emphasized that in the United Nations system, we have produced a number of reports just asking for Japanese responsibility in acknowledging their act and deed in the past, and then ask for the apology, and then also asking for more accurate education for the next generations in order not to repeat the same mistake in the future. And he also referred to the resolutions adopted by the National Assembly of Parliaments of United States and European Union and Australia and then Netherlands. They all call for Japan to recognize the historical facts and then show apologies.
Some people say we should take a more flexible stance towards Japan based on some of these existing historical issues. What's your take?
I understand the background of the arguments because the Korea-Japan is a friendly country. Actually, we have a lot of commonalities. We share also the common value of the democracy and market mechanisms. And also, we just belong to the same cultural regions. But in order to promote bilateral country relations, I think the trust is very important. If Japan continues to negate the historical facts, then it will only undermine the basis of bilateral cooperations. And I really hope that Japan just look into the historical facts and come up with the truth. And then on that basis, we can further promote bilateral relations in more amicable environment.
So how does the UN support that initiative to address some of the issues that are lingering between Korea and Japan?
Number one, the United Nations systems can continue to discuss the atrocities what Japan has did in the past, and then to continue to call for the Japan to take appropriate actions. But the most important thing is for Japan to acknowledge, to admit their problems, their mistakes in the past, and to come up with a sincere apology and the remorse. The longer the Japanese apology would be delayed, I think the more the debt of conscience Japan has to pay will grow.
Is there a high cost diplomatically for them to do that now? What's keeping them from doing it?
I think that taking the high road, it's not easy, but that is the best way Japan should go.
So Arirang TV has covered the comfort women issue, wartime sexual slavery issue, and North Korean human rights issues extensively. What are some advices that you could give us?
Taking this opportunity, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Arirang TV for bringing about in-depth report on the North Korea's human rights situations, and then the wartime sexual slave issues, which are the grave concerns not only of Korea but also international community. Therefore, we appreciate the in-depth report by Arirang TV. But again, considering the fact that the human rights issues is not a bilateral issue or a country-specific issue, it is the issue of the universal nature of the human rights protections. Therefore, I sincerely hope that Arirang TV would extend the scope of the reports beyond this Korean peninsula and then to other parts of the world. There are many parts of the world where the basic human rights were not preserved and protected or respected.
Well, we certainly respect your work over in Geneva. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And that does it for us tonight on After 10. Join us again. We'll see you soon.
We will continue to do our best to improve our show based on the perspective of our viewers. Always feel free to leave us any comments, great ideas, or suggestions you wish to share with us.